In the Newsroom is a production in partnership with Studio Stillwater. Every week, journalists from the Stillwater News Press invite listeners to join us in the newsroom and hear the story behind the stories. Hello and welcome to In the Newsroom. I'm Bo Simmons, editor of the Stillwater News Press. And today I'm joined by city editor Michelle Charles.
Hey.
Reporter Ashlynd Huffman.
Hello.
And joining us today for the first time, new publisher Kevin Shields.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for being here, Kevin.
Thank you.
Hey, here's something I thought of, and we'll get into a little bit of your biography in a minute. I think it's an important, significant determination, the difference between publisher and general manager. You know, I'm big about the etymology of words. You know, I think about them all the time, but to me, publisher feels like now you're someone who's in charge of a production. You know, this is, what do you think? Any thoughts?
Well, the difference within the industry really comes down to general manager usually comes the advertising path, and that's kind of their main. You can have a publisher and a GM both at the same time. You can have one without the other, but in the larger operations, you'll have both. And the GM usually handles revenue side things, really wouldn't interact with you guys much whatsoever. Now in the more modern day, it's pretty much interchangeable to some extent. I do prefer the title publisher over general manager for whatever reason. I guess it's because I've been in the industry 21, 22 years. So
A general manager could mean anything, right? That's anyone you put in charge over a building and a bunch of people. Could be the general manager of whatever that is.
Sounds like it. I mean, it does.
yeah, when I hear about it sounds like I should be negotiating contracts for the NFL or something like that, or making decisions on baseball players to cut. But publisher kind of goes long-time newspaper term.
Yeah.
So publisher, I mean, basically we're talking, big picture, strategy, oversight, financials. And then, of course, you have a background in advertising and in circulation.
Yes. On the business. The business side is my background. But that used to be it in a nutshell. Now that we're scaled back across the board, it's a little more day-to-day interaction, especially on the revenue sides.
That makes sense. I mean, how many of us are operating within a relatively narrow scope anymore? Not really anyone, right?
No, not even in larger markets.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Everyone's asked to do different things, than what they were even 10 years ago.
Sure.
So tell us then where you came from and what you consider home or where you grew up.
Well, we've, as I was telling Michelle earlier,
Melissa,
duh. I'm going to mess that up countless
okay.
times. I do apologize.
I get it a lot. I don't know why. It looked like a Melissa. I do. I
mean, now I'm thoroughly confused. I've basically created the old, familiar with the term military brat for kids and whatnot. I basically created those without ever firing a shot. My kids have moved around so many times. So home is pretty much wherever they are and wherever I am. So home now is in two locations in my brain, in my heart, whatnot. It's here and it's in Rabun County, Georgia, because that's where they are. Come about July 4th, it'll be here. And that'll be that. Now, if you're just talking about where I was born and raised, the lovely metropolitan area of Atlanta, Georgia. But I've lived there, started my career in Athens, Georgia, then wound up in Columbia, South Carolina to Burlington, Vermont, to Birmingham, Alabama, to Dallas, Texas, back to a paper in Georgia, to a paper in South Carolina, which was right next door, county-wise, and then here.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, looking at everywhere you've traveled, one of these things is not like the others. What was Vermont like compared to spending a great part of your career in the South?
Cold.
Cold. Too many months out of the year. Cold,
I guess I'm going to give a little shout out to the village of Jeffersonville, in the town of Cambridge, Vermont, I think is how it's legally stated. It's a village of 400 people. I worked in Burlington, which is the big metro area, and big metro means add 300,000 people or so. It's very small, 600,000 people in the whole state. But Jeffersonville wasn't New Heart Show-esque.
Okay.
It was a lot of former military folks. It was a lot of move-ins, so you didn't get kind of what was known as the Vermont standoffishness.
Okay.
They don't like outsiders a lot in Vermont, and I completely understand it, because what they see is a lot of their outsiders are New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, people with a lot of means who say, I'm tired of the rat race. I have the financial ability to move to Vermont and either work remotely or whatnot, because jobs aren't very prevalent up there, per se. And then they start wanting to change it to what they tried to escape from. So they're very, but I loved it. They're good people, but when you don't get above -10 for 4 straight weeks, it wears on you.
Did you gather any maple syrup?
I ate a lot of it.
Okay.
I never want. I had employees who actually did tap the tree and did the process that they call sugaring.
Oh man!
Yeah.
All of our Vermont listeners are screaming right now.
I know.
Yes,
You're stereotyping us. They're saying,
all one of them is just
one really angry person in Vermont. They're hate downloading this.
One really angry person.
Yeah.
We're more than maple syrup, Michelle Charles.
And the New Heart Show.
Well,
shall I bring up Larry, Daryl, and his other brother Daryl? But
no, I did not meet Larry, Daryl, or Daryl.
Okay.
But the townsfolk in that show, there's a lot to that.
Really?
There's 2 different Vermonts. I think when people think of Vermont, they think of Bernie Sanders, maybe Howard Dean, if anybody remembers.
I do.
Him in any kind of way. Howard Dean always cracked me up because his wife would call if they missed the paper or if they didn't like anything. It was never that, hey, we're upset. It was the doctor, because he's a medical doctor.
Right.
But it was always the doctor.
Oh, wow.
But and then there's outside of Burlington, Montpelier, Brattleboro, which are kind of the cities, and they don't like Bernie Sanders. They're very much, they'd live off the grid if they could, because they live in places like the Northeast Kingdom, which are it's put in perspective. In spring, late spring, in summer, and very early fall, I can get in the Northeast Kingdom in about an hour and a half, the very far northeast corner. In the winter, 4 hours, because they have roads that narrow down to one lane and curve, and they have nowhere to put the snow. So you have to go down and around. So,
and do they like it that way to keep the riffraff out?
They do enjoy being fairly self-sufficient.
Okay.
And being a part of that. Now, after the pandemic, where everything went to Amazon, and it is more to ship stuff there, it's not Hawaii bad, but it's not on the way to anything. So you're not hitting Burlington, Vermont, unless you're going to cross over into Montreal. Well, that got shut down.
Okay.
The border, so you're going there, you're going there. There's nothing in between, nothing on the way. So shipping cost, everything's a little bit higher. The cost of living's pretty bad. The taxes are really high.
So is your family like, we're cold, we want to go south?
At the time, I only had a 2-year-old when we left, and my wife. And in a nutshell, yes, that's exactly what it's the Valentine's Day blizzard of 2007, 3 to 4 feet of snow in 20 hours, and that was that. That was
sounds like a great Valentine's Day.
It was, because I had to go to work both when it was falling and after it fell, and even that level of snow stops anybody. So they like to pretend, it didn't stop. Yeah, they shut down the interstate, shut down the roads, and brought out excavators to move snow. So
I will drive us away from Vermont.
Yeah, I know. I'm fascinated by Vermont. I'll just talk to you about this later.
The Vermont edition, but so
I've always wanted to go to Vermont.
Okay, when you talk about marketing from a circulation standpoint, or circulation from a marketing standpoint, but we're talking about audience engagement. What does that mean to people who aren't really aware of what the circulation director does, or when it's not just routes or whatever.
Well, that would be two. One's the operation side that everybody thinks, and there's the old school mentality back in the 70s, 80s, that Field of Dreams-esque, if we deliver it on time and dry, people will buy it. That's not the case. There's too many options. First and foremost is know your market. And I've had success in college towns. That's what I was really big about here. But it's kind of knowing that there's audience engagement, but there's also showing the value in the product, that it is worth paying for. There's a lot of reputable free stuff out there now, but there's a lot more not reputable free stuff out there now.
You're talking about publications and
I'm
where
talking
people
about
can go find
anything,
information.
because our competition is no longer, and as an industry, we've always been a little bit behind the curve on this, of realizing, no one knew what to do with the internet, so we made the decision, we don't know what to do, so we'll just give it away for free. Which, that anytime you give away a product, I don't care what it is. If Mercedes started giving away free automobiles right now, and 5 years from now went, we made a mistake. They've now established the baseline that the value of a Mercedes is $0. Now, that sounds ridiculous, and it is, to prove a point. When we put all of our stuff out for free, we told the public that it wasn't worth paying for. We created 99% of our own problems. And it was mainly driven by the big major metros that still, to this day, in some ways, don't get it.
We have so many of these things now. I don't know if you're talking specifically about that, but they are curators, these sites that sort of, just pull things from different places.
Aggregators.
And aggregators, thank you, yeah. That sort of drive traffic.
Well, and they like to call themselves that because they want to avoid certain legal parameters. Because they are not. Google is a content producer.
Right.
Facebook is a content producer. They're the fun one because they want to have it both ways. They want to take advantage of being a producer and an aggregate. They want to use aggregating to say, we're not liable. Slander doesn't matter.
Right.
But then they want to produce their own stuff and take advantage of that. So
you're ready to have that conversation whether these third parties should be publishers.
I've got a very defined opinion about it. So,
okay.
In Facebook's case, or any social media, be one or be the other. Don't try and fool. And that's why Zuckerberg's taking so much flack in the hearings that he's been called to and stuff, is everybody on both sides of the aisle seems to think he's trying to play it both ways. Now, from a business perspective, I don't blame him. I would try and play it as long as I could from both perspectives.
If you were Zuck.
Yeah. That's if I was Zuckerberg, I'd be living on Maui already and retired. I'd sold all my stock. At some point in time, I can't spend the money. So
there aren't enough hoodies in the world.
No, there's not.
I would say this as someone who's had to do the dirty work on Facebook. I would not want to be liable for every single comment that falls under one of our articles. Because that seems like a full-time job. To have to make sure no one is being libelous or...
Well, by being accurate, it's not so much the posters responding to it. He wants to basically be able to say what he wants to say and not be libelous for it. Because it's just a bunch of individuals. Well, no, it's the company basically saying this. And he doesn't always have the greatest reputation. Anybody who's seen the movie, there's some truth to that. So, That said, he's been a success. So, and we use this platform, and we're going to use it some more in different ways. So, God bless him.
Yeah.
All right. So, impressions of Stillwater. I think Michelle mentioned that you're taking a lot of meetings and doing a lot of these things. But
I really haven't stopped yet. It's different, but it's at the same time, it's a college town, and there's a difference. A lot of people think a college town is just a town that has a university in it. It's not. I've lived in Columbia, South Carolina, the capital of South Carolina. USC is there. It's huge. It's got some of the signs of a college, but it's not, because there's a lot more to it. If the college disappeared tomorrow, Columbia'd still be there. Athens, Georgia, completely opposite. Stillwater reminds me a lot of Athens, Georgia. Which is great because it's one of my favorite places on the planet. So it's got the same kind of vibe. It's got the same restaurant industry. I like it so far. I'll like it even more when I'm not living in a hotel. So
I can
that.
imagine. No, a college town. I mean, when I think of Stillwater, you've got a town of a certain size, right? I mean, we're not a small town, but we're not a big city either.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this big, 800-pound gorilla of a university, that plays a really big role in the city. And Manhattan, Kansas is a lot like this too. If you go to Manhattan, Kansas, even if you go to like maybe Columbia, Missouri, you'll feel some similarities.
I think you'll be able to learn all you need to know about Stillwater by the movie Stillwater.
You think? You think everyone's going to learn everything they need to know from Matt Damon? That's a segue, folks.
It is. I'm so good at transitions.
That's horrifying. That's absolutely because I was about to say the movie doesn't even really take all that much place in Stillwater.
No, did you watch the trailer?
I watched the trailer. I read kind of a synopsis of it, and I'm sitting there going, "Really?
No, it's not very.
I'm not getting the connection between okay, this guy is Stillwater, and now we're in France,
right? Well, and if it's going to be a fish out of water story, the fish can't stay in the water for half the movie.
That's true.
I imagine. A lot of it was shot around here. Some of it was shot, like El Reno out that way. So yes, I mean, but when they wanted real actual oil rig shots, they went west. And, for, I think, a disaster scene they shot in Coyle, which is south here. And I think they got a lot of kind of B-roll establishing shots inside of Stillwater.
Did they shoot around the campus? Because the daughter's supposed to be taking a year's break from being a student at OSU. And studying abroad.
And this is based on Amanda Knox, isn't it?
It has to be.
No.
Or are they just being non-committal?
No, they've actually mentioned that it's loosely based on that story, but not her specific story. They liked that
type of story.
They liked the idea that someone would be accused of a crime in a foreign country, and then he would be the guy who has to come from, no background in certainly international diplomacy, but maybe not even, speaking with foreign people at all,
he
kind
knows,
of sort of that thing.
He knows how to pronounce Marseille, which, impressed me. Because I don't know.
What did you think of? What did you think of the accent?
I thought you were right when you said it sounds a little bit more, kind of a little bit more Texas.
You can speak to this in Georgia too, because
my family's like southwest Oklahoma toward Texas, and it sounded a little bit more like
Hollywood tends to do a kind of thing where it's just like there's a southern accent, and and you don't have to zone in on any certain region.
So you decided on this podcast you were going to make me mad.
Yes.
There's not a movie out there that pegs a southern accent well. I've been told I've lost mine. If I ever get mad, it comes up. And the worst one of all time, just to set a baseline, Varsity Blues, whatever, the guy who played Dawson in Dawson's Creek at quarterback, screaming out, "I don't want your life.
I don't want your life."
One is, I think he was trying to be Texan there because it happened supposedly in Texas.
Okay.
But he summoned what I think was in his head his inner Alabama, Georgia, Mississippian accent. It's just awful. They're all awful. The only one that comes close, in my opinion, is Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused.
All right.
He sets the gold
that
standard.
was all right,
because he's a Texan takes place in Texas.
He's from Texas. But where I'm moving from, we're used to all that because we're where the story is based. The movie was shot. Yes, The Wonderful Deliverance. In fact, the Dueling Banjos kid worked at our Walmart. Just recently retired, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
You did not mention the movie to him because he felt typecast. He couldn't get more roles. He was just a child actor when he was doing that. So, but it was all about that. And so they have fought very long and very hard to say we're more than Deliverance.
I could see that. I could see not wanting to be pigeonholed like that.
Yes, very much so.
For sure.
I do wonder about I watched the trailers and I looked everywhere for people commenting. It seemed like a lot of people wanted to think that this was going to be either one of two kinds of movies. One where he's some like I don't know, like redneck hero or something,
Right.
fighting in a foreign country. Is like, I don't think that's what's going on.
Like
in this
walking
movie.
tall, like he brings his big stick to France.
Or the second part of it was that it was going to be the other way, like too progressive or something, trying to like make fun of people in the South. And
right.
I don't know. I didn't get either vibe from it. I just think they're trying to tell a story, but we'll see. We'll see how.
I'm interested to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, we'll definitely watch it.
I would say this, like seeing his body language and everything. I mean, I know guys who look like Matt Damon looks in this movie.
Sure.
I mean, I went on a date with a guy who looks like Matt Damon in this movie, and I married him. So, I mean,
okay, that's a good point, because I said there were two reactions. I missed the third reaction, which came from actual Oklahomans and people living in Stillwater who were like, "Damn it, they nailed us."
a little bit. I mean,
Sonic Drive-In.
I know. There was actually a tweet where it's like Matt Damon doing Okie crap, in the movie, and he's at Sonic. But that kind of the way he walks, that kind of like, he's not sure where he's going and he's not sure what's going on. So he's kind of defensive, and he's got that real squared up shoulders, and he's wearing the plaid shirt, and it's like buttoned up kind of high, and he's got the cap kind of pulled down. I mean, that very much, I recognize that. I see guys like that all the time.
Anybody's really going to believe Matt Damon as a tough guy. Because I just can't do it.
Well,
Jason Bourne.
I still can't do it there. It's kind of like Tom Cruise. Even Tom Cruise in like the Reacher movies, you're sitting there going,
but I don't
in real
know.
life, he's 5'2".
Well, that's because Jack Reacher's supposed to be like 6'8".
And the thing is, I don't know if he's specifically supposed to be a tough guy in this film.
I think that's the
maybe
thing.
he's just supposed to be a regular guy who's thrown into an extraordinary situation.
Over his head.
Right,
because at some point it looks like he gets his butt kicked
Right.
in the trailer.
So yeah, I don't know. We don't want
Yeah.
to assume anything unless we see other,
I think
parts
he's
of
supposed
the
to be an
trailer,
everyman.
maybe.
I
No.
do. I think he's supposed to be kind of like an everyman that people can kind of relate to. And then he goes over and he meets these French people, who we love to roll our eyes about. We have this idea or something.
I would love for
But it's a fancy
production
movie.
magic to see if Chris can just like, we pause and he's able to play that trailer, because I love that one sound clip.
Did you ask her to lie?
I'm trying to get my little girl out of jail. That's all I give a damn about.
You sound very American right now.
Good, I am.
Yeah, and you're also a stranger here.
Was that enough time? I don't know.
Oh,
no, but that because there's that line in there where she says, "You sound very American."
You sound like an American. And you say...
He said, "Good, I am," or something like that.
Exactly
Is that
what
what
it
it is? So I said the accent. Here's the thing: there are
Here we
people
go in the Newsroom Theater.
There are people.
For our one Vermont listener.
The in the Newsroom players.
So we know,
You're welcome.
like I said, what I said about the accent was there are definitely Oklahomans here who have that accent.
Sure.
I just don't think it's our most popular one.
Right.
If you're talking about the people where I'm from, sort of more Ozarkian, closer to Arkansas.
Right,
And
more
it
eastern.
sort of blends also into northeast Texas. There's a lot of that's same, and then there's something very different for western Oklahoma or southeastern.
I haven't
or
seen a
south
whole
central,
lot of accents since I got here.
There
Or
are
not that
subtleties.
not that I can really pick out.
In Stillwater, we have people from so many different places. And then you've got people who come here via other places. It's like I've got this weird combination of sort of like a California thing and then like a Western Oklahoma kind of twang, And when I talk to my family, it's a lot more y'all, or when I'm real tired, I like get lip lazy. Or if I'm trying to be real super folksy, But then other times it's like I sound almost a little bit Valley Girlish. So it's this weird thing. So you'll see a lot of weird stuff, or you'll hear a lot of weird stuff in Oklahoma.
The person who I think nailed it, I think I've said this before, Ryan Gosling in the movie Fracture with Anthony Hopkins. Gosling plays a lawyer who's from Oklahoma.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that someone who inflicted this kind of wound intended to kill?
I just think he nails the accent, but
I need to watch that.
he's Canadian, right? So
Yes.
Yeah, kind of impressive work.
Oh yeah,
To me, anyway. I
Yeah.
think he's someone who nailed it.
that was my Canadian
Fracture.
accent.
Decent movie. Yeah. Anyway, we'll be excited to see.
I just made the
how it works.
Vermont
Yeah.
people mad again.
You made all the French Canadian listeners mad too.
I
So
know.
I mean, we're
All
just,
of them.
there go our ratings. We'll never sell ads to Tim Hortons again.
Never.
Let's see. Ashlynd, you were on the social media sphere. What were people saying specifically about the movie or the trailer that really caught your attention?
I just saw that one tweet that Michelle talked about the Sonic drive-in, and it kind of made me laugh.
It's like, thank you for the representation. Representation matters. Yeah.
Sonic culture.
The funny part is Sonic is not just an Oklahoma culture thing.
Right.
No, but it was founded in Oklahoma.
It has leaked over where we lived in Texas. We had like 4 within a mile, and it is one of my wife and kids' favorite places to go.
Terrific. We got 3 of them. Yeah.
My stepdaughter moved to Sacramento, California, and was thrilled to find a Sonic drive-in, probably the only one in that part of the state within a few miles from her house. She was like, I'm home. I can live here now.
It's hard for me because I like the food, but I despise eating in my truck.
I don't like Sonic's food that much. I like their drinks, but not really their food.
Now, wait till your family gets hooked on Brahms.
Well, we
one.
had Brahms down in Denton, Texas as well.
Okay, yeah.
And any place that serves ice cream is going to be a favorite. Well, at least of mine. And usually I'm paying for it. So,
yeah. I have family who moved to Phoenix, and when they come back, they have to stop at Brahms on their way into town. It's the first thing they do. And then they go to Brahms every night while they're here. It's like they cannot get enough Brahms.
I was trying to explain Brahms to someone the other day, and the closest I could get, if you've ever been up north, is Friendly's.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know if
I
I
like
like
Kind of like
Friendly's,
kind of like a mixture of, I don't even know, a Denny's meets a Baskin Robbins, and they had a kid.
Okay. One other vote for Friendly's.
Well, I'm excited for this movie because here's one thing about it. When I heard that Matt Damon, and the way we found out this movie was being filmed was Matt Damon randomly showed up in this art gallery in downtown Stillwater one day, just poking around, just stopping into Modella Gallery to just check it out. He was in Stillwater, and everyone's like, why is Matt Damon here? And then we were like, okay, there's a movie going on. And then we heard it was called Stillwater, and we kind of thought it might be more in Oklahoma. Then we're like, what? It takes place mostly in France? We couldn't figure it out. Anyway, no one knew what this movie was going to be. This is what I would call a fancy movie. This is a pedigreed movie.
Yeah.
This is a movie that was written and directed by the same guy who did Spotlight. And
Love that movie.
Journalism movie.
Love Spotlight.
Yo. And yeah. And the cast is just chock full of like Academy Award nominees and kind of highbrow, like A-list actors. Abigail Breslin plays the daughter. So, I mean, it's a proper movie is what I'm saying.
The director, Tom McCarthy, has said, but he said in multiple interviews, he said that he thinks it's some of Matt Damon's best work. So it'll be real interesting to see if this crazy thing filmed around here gives Damon his first Academy Award for acting. He's got one for writing. I don't think he's got one for acting, right?
Well, it'll be interesting to see because, Oscar worthy, especially nowadays, doesn't always translate to didn't lose boatload of money.
True.
So,
maybe this will have enough action and other things. I mean, everyone in Stillwater will probably go see it.
And they could have released it at any time in the last 6 months, but they wanted people to see it in theaters, so they held on to it.
The scenery looks
That's
beautiful.
another interesting. Will that hurt it? I know everybody say, "Oh, they want to see it in theaters," but people have kind of become accustomed to the fact that Amazon Prime's got a new Chris Pratt movie coming out. HBO Max has put everything they've done on there first at the same time at theaters. So, there is something to be said where college towns have been experiencing something similar with less people being on a waiting list to go to a football game because I've got ice cold beer at my house. I've got what I want to eat. I've got my chair. I've got a great view on the TV. Every game's on TV. Is theaters kind of that next wave like the NFL's been seeing in Major League Baseball to lose people, especially since everything's been streaming the past year?
It could be like newspapers where, the door's been open, the gate's been open, the cow's halfway out the barn anyway. And we got to figure out, do we want to stuff her back in or do we just want to, go to a new model?
Ooh, it's a callback to our circulation discussion.
Yes,
earlier.
it is. I'm circling back around. I'm tying it all together, boys. A nice little bow.
I don't necessarily agree with the analogy because the things that worked 20 years ago do work still. You just have to be willing to change. One of the things that you see, and you've seen it in other industries that we've seen, especially the bigger boys, is they'll analyze it to death, paralysis by analysis. Oh, they've got the best spreadsheets. Oh, they've got the best graphs. And they're always the ones, and it infuriates me. I'm going to call out of my industry, my side of the industry, my background industry, is these are the same people who are being invited to talk at conferences. If the company's bankrupt, or the company is losing readership hand over fist, which we're not, why would I want to come listen to your best practices? Just because you have a big city. I'm not going to name any big cities because I don't want to seem like I'm throwing anybody under the bus, but just because you've got 1 million plus people in your town. Oh, they're one of the big ones. Well, yeah, but when you look at their profit margin, when you look at every measurable that makes sense, but they've got great graphs. Oh, they've got great spreadsheets. They've got weird economic philosophies. It's just infuriating with simple math. If I get more people to subscribe today than cancel for whatever reason today, it's a win. Move on to the next.
I'd call that a win.
And so on and so forth. And eventually you'll start seeing real progress. So that's what we're going to do here.
# winning.
I don't want to steal from Charlie Sheen, but
I don't blame you. I wouldn't model myself after him.
We can check me for Tiger Blood.
You're going to steal. Yeah.
Well, no, because he seems like he'd hold a grudge. I don't want to get on his bad side because he may figure he has nothing to lose now.
You could be. You never know.
Well, I'm just glad you and your family watched Tiger King and you still decided you're going to come to Oklahoma.
I think that's why they came to Oklahoma.
That's not why, but I do find it greatly satisfying because I was publisher of the Clayton Tribune when Joe Exotic ran for president, quote unquote, and put out like the 20-minute commercial. It was, and me and my editor watched it, and we were thinking we need to endorse this guy. We don't endorse. We're a little town. We don't endorse for anything, but we were just kicking around the idea of could we endorse Joe Exotic for president?
Just
he was our hero because not a day went by that he didn't say something that was just gold.
I mean, and how other politicians go after Iran. He was, after Carol Baskin. So, he had a cause. He had a platform.
Exactly.
No, he came here when he ran for governor. And he kept talking about how he came to the debate in a limousine. That was his big thing about how successful he was. And he's like, I arrived here in a limousine. And he kept talking about that. And he wore a fringed leather jacket. And he had a big bottle of Coca-Cola in front of him on the dais the whole time. And he sat right next to Kevin Stitt, the guy who won.
Remember, he had a limo waiting for him if President Trump on his way out had pardoned him.
He's all about the limos.
He made a point that he had a limo waiting for him.
Yeah, he likes a limo.
He does.
Yeah.
Hey, it's not hard to get a hold of one for a day.
Yeah.
So if that's his level of high life success, God bless him. He's reached it.
Now, something amazing, though. We actually had a story that ran, a CNHI story about the whole Joe Exotic thing after the Tiger King miniseries came out. But we had a writer here at the time who had grown up in that area. And he had contacts there. He interviewed Joe Exotic's barber, the one person everyone wants to talk to, right?
Hairstylist.
Like, who would not want to talk to the woman who created Joe Exotic's hairstyle?
I don't even think hairstylist. I mean, that's a level of like master chef,
right?
Great artists in this world.
It will never be replicated.
What do we got going on this week, Michelle?
Oh, man. What do we not have going on? Okay. I did a story this week on body cameras. Our police department is looking at finally getting body-worn cameras for the officers. This has been something that's been a long time coming. They've talked about it for a long time. They always said they couldn't afford to do it, not necessarily because of the camera units themselves, but because of the data storage for keeping all the video. They talked about it being multi-millions of dollars per year.
Ashlynd, you reported on that too.
Ashlynd's done a story on it as well.
I did it like 1,000 years ago, it feels like. But yeah, the main cost was the storage. And that's what both Payne County and Stillwater PD said. So both agencies said storage was a huge cost.
It's gotten more affordable though, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. I talked to Norman McNichol, and he said that when he originally said they couldn't afford it, he didn't say how long ago that was, but now costs have gone down, and so it's an affordable thing.
We're talking going down from millions to a couple 100,000. And
still a lot of money, but not millions.
It's a lot of money for us. I mean, when you cover municipal government, you start to realize that you can hardly do anything for less than $1 million. I used to think $1 million was a lot of money, and it still would be if it were in my bank account. But when we're talking municipal budgets, $1 million is not that as much as you would think. But anyway, so they're looking at spending. I think it's like $360,000 to get the cameras, do the upgrades, do all that. And that's buying like 90 units. That's buying one for every officer and all their specialty units like code enforcement, animal welfare, all of them.
Because they had a few, but usually if you had a patrol car and you had a dash cam, then you didn't have a body-worn camera.
Exactly. They had them on the motorcycle cops and the lake cop because they're out. You know, they didn't have necessarily a good place to mount a camera that they would always be around. You know, the lake cop, Chris, could be out on a jet ski or a boat or on a four-wheeler or something, literally. You know, so he had to have it on his body. So they only had a few body-worn cameras. But anyway, they're viewing it as something the public expects to see. A form of transparency, and then also a little bit of protection, something the officers want now, because it shows how things play out from the officer's perspective. It shows what the officer saw. And so I think it's just seen as protection for everyone at this point. And most of our agencies are going to have them. OSU's working on getting them. The Payne County Sheriff's Office is working on getting them. So that's kind of a big thing. We'll expect to see more and more of those. And it also means that there will be video that we can request.
I'm excited about that.
More things for Ashlynd to request.
Woo! Exactly. The other thing that I wanted to touch on really quick is we are getting an infant toddler court in Payne County. And this is a program through 0 to 3.
Tell her what you thought when the image that popped into your head.
The image that popped in my head when I first read the article this morning.
Yes.
Was toddlers taking each other to court. Like
fighting
imagine
over
like a little
fighting
toddler.
Over that Tonka truck.
One dressed as Matlock, one dressed as John Larquette from Night Court.
There you go. So we've got a baby in a seersucker diaper cover, cross-examining someone else. No, this is actually a system set up within the Payne County court system for families and children, basically 0 to 3 years old, who are involved in the child welfare system. And what it has is special resources.
Right. It's intervention.
It's intervention.
So people don't lose their kids.
So people don't lose their kids. And the whole idea is to develop these programs that would keep them eventually from being involved in the child welfare system, stop it before it starts. So there will be community resources developed as a part of this. Now the thing is, this is a development grant, basically. A capacity building grant, I think is what they call it. So they're going to have to find a partnership with an organization that can take this and make it happen moving forward, help it to continue.
And I really hadn't, before I read your story, I had not heard of court systems or counties doing this or, the different people. So is it, I'm sure it's not unique to us, but is it rare? Is it fairly new?
It is. I mean, it's a national program. It's new to Oklahoma. It is something that has been developed by 0 to 3, which is this nonprofit that basically is very concerned with helping children and their families during that critical time of development when your brain is growing, when all those connections are being made, when, there's a lot of stuff that can happen or not happen to you that really affects the way you are wired for the rest of your life.
Right. And
can take a lot of mitigation.
These are things we've reported on before, because Resilient Pain County,
exactly.
Also, Carolyn McAllister, award winner.
Yes.
Who launched Resilient Pain County.
Yes.
She teaches ACEs. It's an acronym I can't think of.
Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Thank you. And it's really sort of a tally of these things that add up for a child, right? And
absolutely.
it can, there's all kinds of things. Neglect.
It's basically
neglect,
trauma.
abuse, hunger, just different poor environments, like these different things that can add up. And they sort of teach people how can you very early on make children resilient to that, or how can you sort of inject these things that will overcome it, because something they found out is even if you have a lot of these, and it really is almost a chart, they're they count them up. You're going to cook this kid breakfast every morning kind of thing. You're going to have family dinners. You're going to do all these, there's all these different things that can outweigh the bad stuff.
Right. If you've got a good friend
right. Yeah.
or a grandparent who is always there for you, or a teacher who really cares, or something like that, if you feel like you have a safe place to go, it's almost like, then your net ACEs score, it doesn't necessarily go down, but it can mitigate some of those factors. Now, the complicating factor with this, and one of the things about this infant toddler court, is that it's too generational. It deals with the trauma that the parents have dealt with. It deals with the needs that the parents have, because it's usually parents whose lives aren't going well, who have kids who wind up in the child welfare system. So, and we've seen over and over, we've written enough about ACEs, and we've dealt with Resilient Pain County enough to know that this is generational. There are families that hand trauma down like grandma's, pot roast recipe, right? It's just generation after generation after generation.
And they're also,
people doing what they know how to do.
Yeah, and there are also some people who say that they actually want to keep kids in the homes if they can with the birth parents. If they can do that and lower the ACEs, increase the counters,
exactly.
That's better. That's definitely better than having to give a child up for adoption or no parents or other things, right?
And help the parents. Yeah, right. That's the whole thing. You help the parents, which strengthens the family, which helps the children. And then you break the cycle. That's really the whole point, is to get everybody healthier and break the cycle. So that's a lot of the programs that they're doing right now. And hopefully this infant toddler court will be a big part of that and will help with that.
Ashlynd, you're going to look into a few of these things, but we don't want to just be like, it's nice to have those kind of stories, because we can't just have here are the problems we have in this place. You want solutions, journalism as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recently did one about therapeutic foster care, and it was kind of just an intro about what it is. I have another one that I'm working on that deals with a Stillwater family that actually is a therapeutic foster care family. And so basically they try to help with trauma that children have had. It's not necessarily, from my understanding, it's not necessarily an adoption, but kind of like a guardianship. So the kid will be in a home of the therapeutic foster parent, but it won't be like a legal adoption. And the lady I spoke to said a lot of kids, they prefer this rather than getting adopted. So I was kind of shocked because I'd never heard of this before.
But you and, I don't know, I'm not trying to not let the horse out of the barn here, but you and Ashlynd were going to explore something in a different podcast. We can cross-promote now as we wrap this up.
Yes, Chris and I are working on, as Studio Stillwater, we're working on a series of podcasts that focus on foster care, working with Lions Meadows of Hope on this, because they have a model and some resources that they use to encourage foster care, to recruit foster parents, and to provide support for them. And then we're also looking at interviewing people who've been in foster care and foster parents. So I think it'll be really cool. And Ashlynd's already working on some stories, and we've got some stories planned that will cross over into the newspaper, and I think it'll be a good thing. I think it's something that that will help people understand more. Foster care in Oklahoma has it's been rough, right? I mean, we've been under that improvement plan for a while. They were literally losing children at one point. So, yes, I know it was not a good thing. So we're still under that improvement plan, but that's why we have these organizations like Meadows of Hope and the organization that Ashlynd wrote about that are trying to recruit, train, and equip people to take really good care of these kids who have already had a rough go of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tying things together. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost seems like it just happens, but it's,
Ashlyn's making hand gestures. We're not on TV, Ashlynd. Right.
Peace signs.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's probably going to do it for us. Thank you so much, Kevin Shields, new publisher.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Beer. That'll do it. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom. Look for Studio Stillwater wherever you find your podcasts. Find archived episodes on stwnewspress.com.
Yep. That's what happens.
Forrest Gump at the Washington Mall.
Yeah.
I only have one thing to say about that.
Yep. Pretty much.
I read a story where someone actually had like his speech, like it's a real thing. It's not just like a thing he faked.
Oh, okay.
He talked and they cut the audio. But like if you were looking
but he
hard
gave the
enough,
actual speech.
yeah, you could find what he actually had to say.
Yeah.